Hello my good students, I hope you all are doing well. So in this lecture what I want to do is I want to start with some simple arrays and go through or write some codes, and as I'm going through the code I'm going to make things up and I'll try to explain as to what we are doing. So basically right now I created a very basic simple array class, and I have a string argument method, and I have a scanner to input the values. However, at this point I really do not need it because I have actually hard-coded the values. So let's start with the hard-coded values as of right now. And as you know, this is one way of taking the value in, and as I add more to the code, I will also use the other way of creating my array. So at this point, if I run my program, I see that this array numbers is going to have these values 28, 78, minus 4, 81, 48. I have declared a sum variable, and then I'm writing a for loop, and in this case this is called the for each. So basically for int number, so there it is going to go through or reiterate through this array variable called numbers that you see over here, and you're going to store individual elements as number, and then every time it goes to the number it's going to print it out and it's going to add it to the sum, which starts with a 0. Okay, so instead of writing a for statement, it's a for each loop that you can write. So keeping it very simple, as you can see, system out print line. Since I have a print line, so it goes through, gets the first number 28, and then it goes through, remember, it goes through the entire array numbers, right? So, and every time it gets it, it actually assigns it to this variable that you have that you have declared inside your for loop and storing it in number, and that's what you are printing out. And again, if you think these are too confusing, I can even say something like this: numbers inside array, and in this case so this is the variable, and every time I would run it, this is what I'm going to do. And of course this needs to be again changed over here. So at this point, if I run it, then it's the same thing. You're going to go through every one, print them out, add them all out. Okay, so this is your very general simple array. Now let's add a little more interactivity. So instead of having this number hard-coded like this, let's add in a little interactivity, and I'm going to say system and dot out dot print line, and let me go ahead and write the code and come back because I don't want to take too long in the recording process. So what I did was I went ahead and added this section right here, where I'm going to make this thing an interactive array rather than So at this point, what I did was I added a little bit of my interactive arrays, and instead of writing my hard-coded values like this, now I'm going to create my array in this format. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I do not want to hard-code any value, so I just made up this statement saying how many bills do you want to input. This one was just basic numbers, so I'm going to add this thing where I'm asking how many bills do you want to input, and I want to capture how many I want, and I'm going to capture it using the in.nextInt. And this in is a scanner object that I had to define over here, so that you know, and of course as soon as we do the scanner we have to import this package right here. And then I declare another variable called array variable called bills. And the way I do it is by specifying the data type, a square bracket, the name of the array, new, double, and then the size of the array that I want to define. I defined another variable called total bill at 0. Again, it's a double. But now I define a for statement, which basically lets me go through my bills. So with counter I equals 0, bills.length. So depending on how many or what kind of an array size I have, I'm going to go through and ask you to input my bill. And then I'm going to take this and store it into the individual elements. So if I had 3 elements, then I'm going to go to the first 0th element, store my first bill, second bill, and third bill. So this is how I'm going to go through it. And also now I have to add them up, or maybe do an average to show, because right now, it is really not doing anything. It is I'm taking the bills and then I'm adding up these 2 bills. So this is, again, instead of writing a for loop like this, I wrote a little for each loop where it says for double bill amount, and this is the bills array that I have defined earlier. So every time it reiterates or goes through the bill array, the individual element, it stores the value in a bill amount, and then it prints it out, and then also it adds them up. Okay. So what I did here is I am adding them all up, and then I'm writing a system out print line to display my total amount of bill. Okay. So I ask how many bills I want to input. I store the value, and then I add them up, and I'm going to give the total amount. However, I also want to find out what's my average of all my bill. Okay, so this is how I do my average. I'm going to take the sum, and then I'm going to get it or divide that by the array length. Okay, so simple array. So I'm going to say how many bills do I want to input, and let's say I want to input 3 bills, and it's going to come back and say, okay, integer 1 bill, and I'm going to say it was 45.87, number 2 bill 54.87, and number 3 bill 69.4 bill. So at this point it gives me the average of these 3 bills, gives me a total bill. Now this is coming from the other part of the program, which is this section right here, but then I also add them up and give you the sum value. But now this 46.2 is the average of all these numbers. Hold on, just let me check. 170. So as you can see, this sum is the total of these numbers, adds up to 231, and then 46.2 is the average of these 5 numbers. So if you divide 231 by 5, you get 46.2. Now with the bills, only thing I did was to give you this one and then print out my total bill. Now can I not also calculate an average of this total bill? Absolutely. Only thing I got to find out is how many array size. So basically add 170.14 and divide that by 3. It should give me an average of my bill. Right now in this program, I'm not doing it. So in this program, what I started off with is a very simple array, which is hard-coded, and then basically made my array interactive by asking the question, creating the size of an array, and then writing a for loop to take the value in, store the value, add them up, and give you the total right here. Now if I want to make an average of this, I should be able to take the total bill, divide that by how many, and that should give me my average of my bill. So I'm back, and what I want to do is continue changing my method, or changing my program, adding a little bit to it. So remember, this is my initial array list that I had done in my simple array. And in my simple array, I started off with hard-coded value, added some interactivity. So now in this one, as you can see, I named my class as making methods. So this is one way of taking the values in, then displaying the values and displaying the array length and calculating the average and printing out the sum, which you have seen. But now I want to go ahead and create a method. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to say public static double bill average. So the same thing that I am doing, I'm now going to create a method to take all these values in. So, you know, how do I can do it like this, or I can create a method over here. So let me go ahead and write my code to write this bill average method. So here is part of that code that I had written, my simple array, but rather than keeping it all in the same code, I put it in a method called bill average. As you can see, this method does not take any parameter, but it does return a double value, and it is static, which means I do not need to create an object to run this bill average. I can run it by just naming the class or just calling this bill average method. So what do I have in bill average? I did the same thing as in my simple array, again making it interactive. I wanted to ask how many bills do I want to input. I take the values in and I show the value, and then I calculate my average. I show the total bill and average, and then I return my average. So every time I call this bill average, it's going to return an average value. So I need to capture that. At this point I do not have anything, so I'm going to come in and I'm going to write let's say I call it double interactive method bill average equals bill average. So here is the method. Here is the method that I'm calling, and with this call it is going to return an average, which is now going to be stored in interactive bill average method. So now let's display the bill average method. So I am calling this bill average method and storing it in interactive bill average, and then I'm printing it out. So let's run the program and see how it works. So this is the one which is called making methods. I'm going to come in, and again in the beginning it basically goes through and gives you this part of the program, sum average is 3.6, but now I am actually starting to go into this program that I had written called bill average. So as soon as I call this bill average method, it gets over here, and inside you will see there's a scanner in. So that's why it says how many bills do you want to input, and I'm going to say 4 bills, and you enter the bill 48.98, 57.89, 57.99, and 68.57. Right? So now my total bill is 233.43, my average is 58.36, and I just wrote a method saying making a method out of a bill array and printing the average, and the average is 58.36. So now you can see from this simple array program that I had initially written, where I just created an interactive array, instead of doing that, I converted, you know, this part, this bill, into this method right here. So now every time I want to call it, if I want to run it, if I want to run this program one more time, I can just create another one. So I can just say something like if I want to run my program one more time, the only thing I gotta do is come in and add these two lines one more time. Okay, so bill average, and I'm going to say double, and I'm going to give it a different name, my maybe second interactive bill average. And again, I don't have to write the whole thing. I'm going to call this bill average. So this bill average, every time I'm reusing this method. So every time I need to run this, I'm just going to ask for this. So this one could be 3, it asked me, but for this one, it could be 4, it could be 5. So it really does not matter because I am, already utilizing the same one, and this gives me enough flexibility for me to input 2 bills or maybe 5 bills or maybe 10 bills. So and again, this variable names, if you make it long, sometimes it does give you some errors if you don't call them correctly. So just be careful with it. So for this one, if I say how many bills do I want to input, I say 2, and then it asks me for 48.98, 57.58, and now it says, okay, this is the average. How many bills do you want to input again? Now if I say 5, and I say 55, and then 78.3, 58.3, 47.8, and 21.4. So now my average is 52.16. So what I'm doing over here is taking the same thing but converting into a method, and this method does return a value which is a double value, but it does not take any parameters. Now you can create your double bill average where it does take parameters. Again, it's up to you as to how you want to do this.